Well guys, thanks for tuning back into Ozlander Reviews. We can officially call this a series now, as we're about to start our third review. This time we're going to be taking a look at Netflix's Death Note, starring Willem Dafoe and Nat Wolff. So, how about we just get right into it? We start with an opening shot of Seattle, some random shots of people, trains and whatnot, before focusing in on some cheerleaders and the obligatory nerd ignoring them. No time wasted to introduce Light Turner. Of course they changed the name. Revealed to be making some side coin, pimping those big brain skills. Gotta respect a player, but wouldn't someone dealing any sort of contraband find a little less obvious spot for the drop? I'm honestly surprised this isn't what gets him busted, really. Some more cheerleading, doomy eyes, and then we get a movie title. Some supernatural wind blows in. Hey, Mia, get rid of that cigarette. Those things are more dangerous than Ferris wheels. Before the Death Note falls from the sky, Light picks it up and starts to head home. Unfortunately, he comes across this young lad being bullied. Light tries to interfere, offering just the absolutely lamest defense ever.
I mention it because that would make you over 18, which means that if you were to beat me up, which I'm sure you could, it would technically be child abuse.
And of course, gets knocked the fuck out. I thought this dude was supposed to be a genius. Cut to Light being found by a teacher. Of course, the main concern when you find a student unconscious on the ground is, what's this soppy paperwork over here? And so the next scene we get, this absolute douche nozzle of a... Is he even the principal? I'm honestly not sure. Light gets sent to detention, and after some nonsense with the teacher, he's left alone. Light pulls out the Death Note, something the real Light would never do, but if I pointed out every instance of shit the real Light wouldn't do in this movie, we'd be here all day. So I'm just going to cover it all after the review when I compare it to the anime. Before leading into his first contact with the death god, Ryuk. And he screams like a little bitch. We get just a painful moment where Light runs around screaming with his voice about 2 octaves higher before he finally chills out. Willem Dafoe's performance as Ryuk is one of the few things that makes this movie watchable though, and he soon goads Light into using the Death Note on a bully named Kenny outside.
Go on. Help her.
Light does so, causing Kenny to be decapitated in a very Final Destination-esque death scene. Ryuk tells him that if he feels up to using the Death Note, to do so. But if not, simply stash it for 7 days, and he will find it a new owner. Cut to dinner between Light and his father, Detective James Turner. The family dynamic is quite different in the film, with both Light's sister and mother omitted, his sister completely, and his mother by death. After a huge argument between Light and James, Light heads up to his room to further examine the note. Before long, Ryuk arrives, and the two begin discussing the rules of the note. Eventually, Light goes to James's room and gets a photo of the man that ran over his mother, Anthony Skamal. This is a huge tone shift from the source material, as it changes Light's first kill, well, his first ungoaded one anyway, into one of vengeance rather than idle curiosity. Of course, James is informed of Skamal's death soon after, and when he comes in to inform Light about the news, he simply chalks the death up to karma.
Karma's a bitch.
Another cut takes us to Light reading the note in a packed gymnasium. Mia comes up and strikes a conversation, opening with the death of Kenny, the boy Light decapitated. Light shows her, with minimal convincing,
I can't tell you. Okay. Do you really want to know?
The note, like a frickin' mook, and demonstrates its power by causing this lovely gentleman, James Brody, to release his hostage and then turn himself into road paste. Mia and Light team up and resolve to use the note to kill criminals and start cleansing society. Light decides that they should call themselves Kira, meaning light in Celtic and killer in Japanese. While this is a nod to the source material, it is also a change, as Light did not choose the name Kira in the original. Misa also comes along far later. Before long, Kira draws the attention of the Detective L after massacring over a dozen victims in a Tokyo nightclub. L reveals that he had been planting names of obscure criminals into law enforcement databases for quite some time, and now they know where to look. This actually was an excellent introduction, and it does do the character justice. Unfortunately, it doesn't last very long. L makes his way to Seattle and contacts the FBI, who in turn contact James, who has been outcast by his fellow officers for trying to catch Kira. Watari arrives and the two discuss whether Kira is in law enforcement before contacting L. L offers to assist Turner with the Kira case. While the common belief is that Kira is Japanese, Elle believes that he is in Seattle and wishes to investigate. Meanwhile, Mia is busy scouring Kira worshipper sites for potential names. People have taken to naming people online for Kira to kill, but Light points out that there is no way to know if people aren't just making shit up. Watari takes James to meet Elle in person, and the two discuss James's investigation. He notes that Kira's first murder was actually James Brody. Technically it was Kenny, but this is the first Kira kill, so close enough. He hands James a folder showing that their station network had not been hacked,
Did you just hand me evidence you hacked the Seattle PD?
confirming that the leak is from the inside. Elle then heads outside to an assembled news conference and directly challenges Kira, much to Ryuk's amusement.
Now I'm rooting for this guy.
Light approaches his dad and starts fishing for information in what was, frankly, the most obvious questioning I've seen in a while. He may as well have said, "Hey Dad, I'm Kira. You don't happen to know Elle's real name, do you?" He clearly doesn't notice anything though, because in the next scene he is quite pissed off to discover that Elle has had Light tailed, due to his potential access to the case files. Light and Mia head to the local Ferris wheel for some private discussion about the officer Elle has tailing Light. Light wants to slow down on using the note until the heat dies off, but Mia's got some old-fashioned bloodlust going and wants to kill not only the officer tailing Light, but all of the officers investigating. Light is not impressed. Oh hey, they must have sorted it out. Chilling on the couch, watching the news, everything seems... Oh. Well, looks like you ain't getting laid tonight, buddy. Light suggests that they use the note to off a guy who killed a couple kids, but Mia isn't interested and leaves. Next up is an admittedly kinda cool scene where first the assistant director collapses down the stairs from a heart attack before the entire investigating team decide to emulate Looney Tunes and jump off a high-rise. Light assumes Ryuk is behind the attack and leaves school in a rage, trying to find him. He heads home and finds Ryuk at the kitchen table and just making a hell of a mess. At least anime Ryuk wasn't leaving apple cores everywhere. Light questions Ryuk, and he doesn't answer either way as to whether or not he killed the agents, instead goading Light and suggesting he give the note to someone else. Light instead threatens to write Ryuk's name in the note. We get an admittedly smart-ass retort from Ryuk.
You could try. But I warn you, there are 4 letters in my name. Most anyone's ever gotten were 2.
But this is just another unnecessary change, all for the sake of one line. Cut to Mia and Light. Light's father comes onto the news and viciously attacks Kira, resulting in Mia going for the death note and some pretty heated arguing. James heads home and we get a pretty good moment of dark humour.
Turner.
This is Elle. Just making sure you hadn't died.
Before another cut to Light sitting at some cafe or something. I mean, does it even really matter at this point? Elle approaches him and before long accuses Light of being Kira. James being alive convinces Elle that Light is Kira, and Light's defense is frankly pathetic. Elle makes it clear he isn't interested in anything but arresting Light.
You're the one who flew into the sun. I'm just here to make sure you actually burn.
Light meets up with Mia, and the two reconcile. They decide to take Elle out, and Light uses the note to take over Watari, instructing him to use the 2-day window to investigate Elle. He also instructs him to update Light on his personal frickin' mobile! God damn, he's dumb! Watari rings them and informs them of Elle's backstory, but he doesn't know Elle's real name. Light ain't got time for that, so he sends Watari to do a little digging. Watari begins making his way to St. Martin's Orphanage, an organisation that raised and trained Elle. Quick cut to Elle waking up and heading to Watari's apartment. He realises Watari has disappeared and immediately makes his way to Light's house, walking right in and plopping himself down at the table, where Light, Mia, and Detective Dumbass are having a conversation. Elle immediately tells Mia to leave, and right after she does, quickly explains that Watari would not, under any circumstance, leave without informing him. He then tells James that Light is Kira, which of course James ignores. Things escalate quickly, with James grabbing and overpowering Elle when he gets aggressive towards Light. He throws Elle out, although Elle does have a warrant and has the house searched. While Light and his father stand outside, James seems to be sure Light isn't Kira, but he does ask,
Is there anything I need to know?
which does kind of make it seem like he's at least starting to wonder. Ryuk, meanwhile, is mocking Light, stating,
You know what happens when they find it. It ends up my book again, Light. And guess what name I'm gonna suggest we start with when I find it a new home?
And again, filling this antagonistic role that he just did not have in the original anime. Next up, we get a quick shot of Watari driving. Then Elle is shown to be surveilling Light. Back to Watari, who has arrived at the end of the road. He gets out of the car as Light calls, and he reveals that he doesn't know exactly where the orphanage is, but that he hopes to find it within a few hours. We cut to Light and Mia discussing the homecoming dance, with Mia telling Light that they won't ever stop following him, and that they need to end this, once and for all. She then says that he needs to trust her. Yeah, that'd be a hard no from me. Anyways, back to Watari on his leisurely stroll through the woods, and as the camera rotates from an overhead shot to behind, we see that Watari has arrived at the orphanage. He shoots the padlock off the chain door and enters. This place has definitely seen better days. As Watari makes his way through what was the sleeping area, we see an old jar of candy balls spilled out across the floor, which I presume were Elle's. Doesn't really make sense that they're like the only thing on the floor besides a doll, dust, and some leaves, but movie's got a movie. We also see the isolation room that Watari mentioned to Light on the phone earlier.
For their first test, the wards were placed in a conditioning vault. Those who retained their sanity after 7 months were initiated into the program.
As Watari continues, we see that Ryuk is also there, laughing evilly as Watari passes him, unaware, of course, of his presence. He opens a hidden trapdoor on the floor. Watari, not Ryuk, and climbs down. Cut back to Elle, who is alone and trying to work out what Light is up to. He notes that Light isn't just some sadist, that there is always justification for his actions, however flimsy. He seems to realise something and grabs the phone, angrily asking for the New York field office. Next up, of course, is the bloody prom scene we have to have in pretty much every American teen movie. Mia and Light arrive before back to Watari, who is running, weirdly enough. It's the first time he's broken into a run since the note took hold, and it's weird. Maybe it's because he's getting close, maybe he senses that he's running out of time, I don't know. He finally arrives at a long-abandoned file room and starts rifling through everything. Jump back to the prom, and Mia comes up to Light with this dude Brandon, asking if they can dance. Light quickly puts his top hat on Brandon, and the two dance, thus distracting the two men following Light. Light quickly leaves. He runs to Mia's locker, getting the death note and bolting away. He calls Watari, and Watari informs him that he hasn't found the name. Light cuts his losses and flips to the page with Watari's name on it to burn it, but it's gone. Light angrily realises what's happened, before he starts telling Watari to run. Watari, however, says someone is coming. He finds Elle's name at the last second, but before he can tell Light, he is gunned down by the armed men that burst into the room. Light starts lashing out at a nearby locker, as Ryuk mockingly points out.
You said dealer's choice.
Light asks him why he didn't tell him the page was missing, and Ryuk, ever the smartass, simply replies that, what would he and Mia have had to talk about if he did? Light returns to the dance looking pretty pissed, and he shoves Brandon away. Mia finally reveals the truth. She didn't just make sure Watari died, she killed the agents as well. It was never Ryuk, although he obviously knew. She then reveals that the reason she took Watari's page is because she wrote Light's name in the book, and that if he doesn't pass it on to her, he dies. However, once he does so, she'll burn his page. She then turns and leaves, telling Light to go get her book. Back to Elle, who has just been informed of Watari's death. He then, he loses his shit. He arms himself and he steals a police car. James puts out an APB on Elle and asks for his son to be put in protective custody until Elle is found. Anyway, we see Light writing in the note, but we don't see what he writes yet. Light manages to evade all the police searching for him, running through the darkened streets and alleyways. Elle is in hot pursuit, smashing his car through a few things in the process. Elle sees Light and begins to pursue him on foot. They're both pretty fit, I'll give them that. Light bolts through a restaurant, cutting through the kitchen, with Elle following soon after. This chase scene is actually pretty decent, going on for quite a while and really driving home just how much Elle wants to catch this boy. We also hear him apologising to people he smashes through, which admittedly is pretty funny. Elle finally catches Light and holds him at gunpoint. Light breaks down and is about to hand him the death note when some dude from inside the building comes out. Elle states that Light is Kira, but that was a bad idea, as the guy immediately knocks him out.
Whew, that was pretty painful to get through, wasn't it? But I hope you enjoyed part 1. Part 2 will be up
within the next 2 weeks, and we'll include both the end of this movie as well as an in-depth comparison between the anime and the adaptation, where we can really take a good look at just how bad they screwed this up. So, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope to see you next time. Ciao.